Sound check, sound check, sound check. Sound check, sound check. Oh, you thought it was going to be Rob over here talking to you about wrestling? No. Bow down to your new king right there. All right. I think we're live. What's up, guys? Happy Tuesday. It's a big Tuesday here, Rob by Wrestling. Really, really big. Is there. Okay, we got it. All right. Huge Rod by Wrestling Tuesday. I wanted to go ahead and shout out our new co host, whoever the hell this guy is. You guys have any idea who this is? Yeah, me neither. I don't know if that's Danny Garcia. I don't know if it's the guy that was on that hacker show on USA. I don't know who this guy is, but this is the guy apparently that's going to lead the vision into the future. This is what all the storylines have been building to is this guy right here. Now, be honest, last night on Raw, if you were watching and you saw this unveiling, did you think anything of it? Did you have any reaction to any of it? I mean, it's odd, right? We knew it was him, but you figured there would be somewhat of a better reveal than what they did last night. Last night's Raw was odd. It was this mix of like a really good Raw in some ways, and then a whole bunch of other crap that just seemed kind of hard to care about. But at least we got some additions though. We got some progress. Yeah, he Don was a little bit braver on rocking the bald look before I was. That's for sure. That's for sure. So Dom gets a little bit of an advantage with that. I would tip my cap to Dom, but there's nothing to tip. Now Austin, look at Austin. He's got more hair than I do. Austin's looking good. I give him all the credit in the world. So what's up, guys? I see E there in the chat. I know E, you got a ton of media to consume today, E. So I'm really happy that you came because you have so much to watch and listen to today, E, that I'm really glad that you were able to really grace us with your presence. N- no, I did not see that. I'll be honest with you, E. Not not the biggest JCW or Juggalo adjacent fan. I don't consider myself that. Uh, I respect that they have a wrestling promotion. I think it's great that they're getting it off, not getting off the ground. They've had it forever, but they're going all in with it, and I think that's great. And it seems like they are fairly well liked as wrestling promoters. So shout out to them. I've just never really understood the whole ICP thing. It's honestly, it's like the one thing from my era that I don't look back on nostalgically. Like I didn't like it back then, and I still don't like it now. So I don't know. I wish them the best. If there's good television out there, I definitely will check it out. But at present time, I just don't have a ton of interest in anything GCW related. Glad RVD though is doing his thing, getting the interviews. I mean, RVD's all over the place. We saw RVD on Saturday night's main event. We see RVD over on YouTube. I like when we get ourselves a healthy dose of some Rob Van Dam. And we talked about him last week. Had him as the top opponent of John Cena that John Cena only had like one match against. So shout out to him. All right, I'm gonna take one of the two balding guys off the screen. That's so unfair to Austin Theory. Austin Theory is not balding in any way. He just has a unique haircut. That's not fair to me to say that to Austin Theory. I shouldn't say that. All right. I'll take Austin Theory down and I'll raise up someone else. How about this guy? How you guys feeling about this guy right now? I gotta say, I didn't catch that E. I seen it got a ton of views, so a lot of people did. I haven't. I just haven't sat down and caught it. Uh, I will though. I mean, it's been in my algorithm enough, so I definitely will catch it. What do you think of this guy here in the corner? He had himself a hell of a weekend, didn't he? I mean, he got to tap out John Cena. He's got to tell off so many little kids. Let me just say, as someone who works with kids, and by the very nature of my job, kind of can't tell him off that often, right? You can have a good talk to him, you do all that, but you can't really like make kids cry and hurt their feelings unless right now you're Gunther. Gunther has all the carte blanche in the world right now to make kids cry. It's one of the funnest responsibilities you can ever have in wrestling. Is like, if kids aren't crying, then Gunther isn't doing his job. And that's awesome. Good for him. No, Cena has never won King of the Ring. He hasn't even participated in it that much, E. Do not speak that into existence. I do not need a return King of the Ring run from John Cena. We're going to talk about this run he just had it a little bit. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm not looking to relive that run in any way. So I'm not interested in a King of the Ring tournament. E, tread lightly, buddy. Tread lightly. I think Gunther's having himself a hell of a weekend. I caught him on Raw last night. He opened Raw as he should have. Boos out the building. That's why you make that move. We're going to talk a lot about the decision. And the decision has been analyzed to death. So I'm going to take a slightly different angle on it today, but I think we're going to end up talking, honestly, about all the same stuff. Before we get into it, anyone else other than E, the chat is open. Please keep sending your chats. E, I'm not asking you to stop. I'm just saying, on top of all that, send some chats. Get the conversation going. We have a lot to say about this. I know you guys have a lot to say because everyone has been talking about this. I haven't opened up YouTube once in the last 3 days, and there wasn't some smark in front of a webcam, like me, debating this finish. This is going to be a finish we're going to debate for a long, long, long time. Let's see what he has to say here. You hear Vince McMahon voiceover in the video package for Cena. Rumors that Vince is backstage at Saturday Night's Main Event. Only Cena and select few were allowed backstage for certain reasons. They won't admit anything. I did not hear that. The word that I just saw on the internet, not heard from any sources or anything, was that Vince wasn't there, but I don't know. And it sounded like, according to like Mark Henry and some other people I listened to who were there backstage, that it was a fairly normal backstage environment with just everybody obviously greeting and congratulating Cena. So there was a lot of chaos back there. I haven't heard that rumor specifically either. That's very interesting. All right. So I got to ask all you guys a question, though. I have a serious question for all of you, or at least for most of you. Serious question here. Did you guys start watching wrestling like 2 months ago? What the hell was going on Saturday night? Not in the ring. I understood everything WWE was doing in the ring. I understood the match. Felt like I understood the ending. Understood the tribute. And I kind of understood what was going on the post show on YouTube. What I do not understand and what I cannot wrap my head around is some of the freaking reactions to Saturday night's main event. And I wanted to explain maybe why some of those reactions happened in the way they did. But also, I think they were the most ridiculous reactions we've had in a really, really long time. There's a problem in WWE, for sure. There is a problem that Triple H needs to address. But I don't think he added fuel to the fire or did anything intentionally to actually make those problems worse on Saturday night. If anything, Saturday night was the rare time in recent months where we should actually kind of clap for Triple H and say he did a good job. He booked bravely, and we never, ever say that about Trips. So I would say that I can't believe this. my smarky little heart is going to melt here. But I support Triple H as it pertains to this specific, very, very specific booking decision. And I'm like you guys. I'm like a lot of people on the internet. I loved seeing Triple H get dunked on Saturday night. I'm a big fan of dunking on Triple H. Let's face it, Triple H is a well-paid guy who will tell you how great he is at his job. You add in all the scar tissue that all of us have from the Reign of Terror and from the entirety of his wrestling career, and some of that from even his time as a booker. And when it comes time to boo Triple H, to criticize Triple H, there's a whole lot of us that are kind of doing this, right? We love to criticize the H-Man, the big nose. But I think our anger in this one is a little bit misguided. And in like the ensuing 72 hours, or however long it's been since that finish, I felt like rationality has actually prevailed. Most people are starting to like understand the logic in the decision. But the fact that this was even a discussion in the first place, and the fact that you have like really respected wrestling commentators that are advocating for all these other finishes that should have been the finish on Saturday night instead of exactly what we got, I don't know what freaking planet you guys are on, but I'm here to tell you, you're dead wrong. You're dead wrong, but you do have a little bit of a grievance. First up, I want to address something that hasn't been addressed that much in all the discourse about all of this. E, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to my audience. I'm talking about anyone else who has this head going on right now. Anyone else who's got this going on. Anyone else who just got pain, emotional and physical, up and down your body. I'm talking to you people, okay? Have we aged out of the wrestling live audience? Just think about that for a second. I think a lot of us in this smarky demographic, in our 30s to 40s to 50s, I think a lot of us feel like we are the live audience. But we also complain all the time about the ticket prices, the inaccessibility, how the product has left us behind, all of these things. All that complaining goes on and on and on, but we're still seeing these buildings are full. There's somewhat of an enthusiasm out there. Now, I think this is going to change in the future because we've already seen some leading indicators might be lagging just a little bit. But for the time being, the buildings are full. People are going to these shows. But I don't think it's us anymore, guys. And I think Saturday night might have proven that. Now, I don't know if it was the nostalgia kicking in. I don't know if it was the moment and getting excited about pro wrestling. I don't know if it was just genuine love for John Cena. But to have a freaking Super Cena chant going in the middle of a match and to have fans in the arena in legitimate tears over John Cena losing has me thinking, A, we're in Bizarro World, but that was DC, not in Canada, so that didn't happen. Or those audiences, those live audiences that we've talked about so much over the years, the audiences that booed Roman Reigns, that booed John Cena, that were demanding, that throwing out the CM Punk chants, all of that stuff, I think those audiences aren't paying for tickets anymore. And the audience that they're getting at these live shows now is in one of two categories. Either A, they're the fans they picked up in the most recent boom, which makes sense. A lot of us came online many, many years ago during the Attitude Era. Came on during a boom. And if you talk to the old school people who predate us as wrestling aficionados, they think we learned everything wrong because we saw bad and counterintuitive booking get rewarded and be seemingly the right thing to do. Now, there's some argument to that. I also think sometimes we overrate the Attitude Era when we're discussing it, and then when we try to talk about it critically, we kind of underrate it and don't put it in the context of the time. And so our Attitude Era discourse, it's all over the place. But I do think it is likely that in an era where WWE picked up a bunch of fans, business went up during the Bloodline era. If we acknowledge that, then we kind of have to acknowledge that they have new fans. New fans that have only watched the last 5 or so years of pro wrestling. They don't have all this context that we have. They don't have all this scar tissue that we have. They don't have all these same exact resentments. They're building their resentments, right? They're getting stacked upon. They're going to be on podcast 20 years from now talking about this is Triple H's reign of terror. Isn't that going to be something? Can't wait for that. Speaking of, this is just a quick aside. My friends over there at the Torch, they post their 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago audio shows. I'm dying for one of mine to come up. We're right around the time where I started going on with Wade. I just want to be in syndication in wrestling media. Just a personal goal of mine. Dumb aside, threw us off topic, but I really wanted to get that little thing in. Now, I'm talking about these new fans. They could be of any age, right? I don't think that the swell of fans that happened in the Bloodline era was just new fans. It wasn't just a bunch of 13-year-olds or 8-year-olds or 10-year-olds or 20-year-olds. It was probably across the board. And honestly, what 8, 10, or 12-year-olds are affording tickets to these shows? These are adults with money. Speaking of adults with money, the other segment that may very well make up these crowds right now, or at least made up that crowd on Saturday night, were the little kids that we used to complain that the product was for. Those people are like young adults now. Those people are your entitled bosses now. Like, think about it. People in your life. You have kids, nephews, nieces, neighbors, I don't know, wards, whoever you're looking after. And you recall when they were 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, wearing their chain gang stuff, wearing their C Nation stuff. Well, I got news for all you folks. Those are the Gen Zs that we can't stand at work nowadays. Those are those people. Like, they are adults living and breathing among us. And like me personally, until really this Bloodline era, it was always hard for me to be like critical of or ever want The Rock to lose. I had this like kayfabe thing in me since I was a little kid that I always had just the bias towards my favorite wrestler. And I think a lot of that crowd had that as well. So I think we have to put that in context. When we're discussing all of this, I think the last few generations, we have dominated the wrestling discourse for sure. But we might just share the real estate a little bit. And there's plenty of good creators who are talking about this stuff who are much younger than us, and a lot of innovative stuff coming on. So I don't want to be the old man gatekeeping, yelling at the cloud, and not allowing these people in. But the thing we've accepted as common knowledge in the past may not be such accepted common knowledge going forward. And I actually have a little bit of concern about that overall. Now, in terms of the decisions, let's try that one again. In terms of the decision to have Cena tap, there's lots of debate about that. Could Cena have won? Should Cena have won or should Cena have lost, but it been a pass out or a pin, not a tap out? All of this is in the realm of debate. And I think to a certain extent, all of it is legitimate debate and discourse. But something you have to think about is in modern wrestling, there's not a lot of stakes for anything. And different companies try to do different things. AEW has like 97,000 titles. And so the stakes have to always be all these little titles. Or one thing I do like that AEW does, and I wish more wrestling companies would do this, but sometimes the fictional numbers don't quite work out. Like AEW has a lot of storylines that revolve around winning matches, getting titles, and earning money based off of that. Now, some people, I think in the past, have been weary of storylines that involve money or revolve around money, but I think at least it gives someone a reason. Why do I want to be better? Why do I want to be good? Wins and losses, as we've talked about over the years so many times, they have a weird currency in pro wrestling. Like the man to the left of me right here, King Gunther. as he referred to him as. Wins and losses have been very important to him. Being undefeated, getting all those wins, is important to his character, was important to Asuka's character. Obviously has been important to Triple H's character, extremely important to Goldberg's character, was very, very important to The Undertaker's WrestleMania character. So the wins and losses in that way can matter, but only for the ones that are super, super protected. So winning a match you shouldn't have won due to heel tactics really only takes you so far in modern wrestling. It's hard to draw heat. And I'm not like, this isn't some piece of science I just uncovered. People have been talking about wrestling discourse since the 90s that there's no way to draw heat anymore. It's impossible. You have to find real stakes in pro wrestling and put them into the kayfabe world. And there's a lot of instances of that. In fact, later on, we're going to talk about some instances that were similar in recent years where fans have straight up got their hearts broken. And a lot of people have said that this was like a heartbreaking moment for those fans. Also, you have titles. Now, titles in the Triple H era, you might argue, have been devalued because they're on the same people so often. And prior to that, they would change so often, so you never really would invest in the champion. Regardless, champions and championships just aren't protected like they used to be. They don't mean as much. So you need something that means something. John Cena never giving up, that meant something. It's something people care about. That's why it's elicited such a reaction. Not just from the people in the arena, not just from the Cena fans, and not just from the commentary class. It has elicited a reaction from everybody. Likely Triple H's point here. Now, Triple H, he gets criticized all the time for a lot of reasons. And one of, I think, the core criticisms of his booking is once he cleaned up the booking, he kind of cleaned it up like a little too good. Right now, WWE is like this house that has a really good cleaning situation going on, but it's so clean that you don't want to go into it, right? It's almost too clean that it's uninteresting. It's not comfortable to be around. That is the current state of WWE. And if you take the biggest criticism I think of Triple H's booking is that he plays it safe. I feel like so often we're sitting there and we have big stakes to a match or a potential big match, and we know it's a WWE pay-per-view, and what happens? We think of the possibilities that can happen, the chances that could take, the endless possibilities. And oftentimes it feels like Triple H goes with the most safe option. Not even necessarily the most logical option, because sometimes the most logical option is not the safest option. But he goes with what is safe, what will work, what there's sort of a guarantee for. Obviously, based on the reaction, I don't care what the reporting is or what they expected or didn't expect, this was not the safe path. This was actually a risk. And even though I think Cena tapping out and Cena losing is very, very basic wrestling logic. That's why all of us plebes know it, right? If it was some really unique piece of booking, we wouldn't know about it. But, you know, it's even part of plenty of storylines, the time-honored tradition. You go out on your back, yada, yada, yada. Cena being so given. We've heard it 1,000 times in the last couple of days. And think about the other option that Triple H could have gone with if he would have taken some of those safer ways. Some of the ways that wouldn't have led to quite the same amount of booing that he had on that stage in the post-show. Cena winning would have brought on tons of negative responses. The in-arena crowd would have loved it that night. The post-show would have been great. We would have celebrated the triumph of Cena. And then all of us would have cracked open these mics and said, that's exactly what's wrong with WWE. And we would have all been, I think, right in our stances. But it would have yielded also a negative response. This negative response was different because it's really the first time that the live audience has communicated that negative response to Papa H. A regular pin would have worked pretty well in terms of ending his career. But what would that have done? I've seen John Cena get pinned several times this year. The invincibility of John Cena was broken a long time ago. I know LOL Cena wins. And For every one of these stories, we're going to talk about how giving he is. There's a lot of other stories of times when he wasn't so giving. In fact, he made the guy be on commentary to call his last match. The guy he was least of all giving to had to be on the call for his last match. It might be a career highlight for him. It's awful. So regular pin might have worked, but it would also pass through the night. And let's face it, it's a different kind of regular pin than some other situations. So in 2000, Mick Foley had it might have been Cashier's Jack, but I'm pretty sure it's Mick Foley. At No Way Out 2000 has the Hell in a Cell with Triple H, putting the career on the line for Mick Foley. So it really doesn't matter in what way Mick Foley lost in that match. The fact that he lost meant that he was retired. He came back like 3 weeks later. Didn't want to, according to him, but he did come back a few weeks later. But what made Triple H a heel in that way was just the fact that he beat him. Just the result. That's all that needed to happen right there. Flash forward 2008, another retirement scenario. Even though everybody knew what the outcome of Shawn Michaels versus Ric Flair was going to be, because they built a retirement weekend around if he loses this match, he's going to retire. That had been the stipulation since like the winter, but they never built a whole weekend and put him in the Hall of Fame and all that. So you kind of knew what the result was going to be. But what gave that moment such gravitas and the bigness about it was just a simple pin. Because the pin is what triggered the end of Ric Flair's career. In this case, win, lose, draw, tap, DQ, it didn't matter. It was John Cena's last match. So if you want to gain some heat out of it, you had to do what you were going to do. A regular win is just checking the box. So I've been saying it's all good, but there is an issue. There is definitely an issue. The issue isn't what happened on Saturday night. The issue is about what's been going on for the last year plus. The issue was John Cena's final run. The heel run all the way to the last parts of the babyface stuff, which was obviously just sort of stapled together with all the million hours and hours and hours and hours of John Cena interviews over the last week. We could tell you everything has just been kind of booked on the fly, and it has definitely shown. The issue that people had on Saturday night, I believe, was misguided. I don't think people should have been mad at the tap. I don't think people should have been mad at the result. I think what people are mad about, the last year plus. And for them, I think this was just kind of like a last straw. It's funny because there's been so many comparisons of the Cena heel turn. I think the initial heel turn was pretty favorably compared to Hulk Hogan. And people wondered, would it also compare to Steve Austin's heel turn? Now, if you analyze the Steve Austin heel turn versus the Hulk Hogan heel turn, I'm talking 96 and 2001 respectively, of course. One of them set the wrestling business on fire. The other one extinguished said fire. So they kind of bookended wrestling eras. But I think when it comes to Steve Austin himself, one way that it's very similar to the John Cena heel turn is it took up a lot of the real estate at the very end of his career. So only got a brief babyface section with him before he pieced out. Remember, this was the case with Austin where he was out for almost a year when Rikishi did it for The Rock and did it for the people. So he's out almost a year. He comes back. There's a few months of babyface where he feels like he's not as hot as he should be. But if you go back and watch it, he's great. He was very much still Austin. Everyone on the roster would kill for that now. We roll into WrestleMania, late March, early April. He turns heel. He stays heel all the way to Survivor Series. So about, if you take the month off and put the month on, maybe like a month or two longer than the Cena run. And similar to Cena, the very next night after Survivor Series, we forgot that Austin was a heel, and we were just back to face Austin. Well, he walks out right after WrestleMania, like about a month after WrestleMania. The next year is gone for a whole long time, puts his vest on, takes 3 rock bottoms, and we don't see him again for many, many years until he faces Kevin Owens. So I think the heel turn for the Austin character has always just been this sort of cringe thing at the end of his career, even if it had some good moments. And me, myself, I grew up on that heel turn, so I hated Steve Austin. I could not believe what he did to The Rock. You will get no argument from me about the overall run. The overall heel run and the last time stuff, it was terrible. The tournament was terrible. All of this was bad. People just loved John Cena. So there was a lot of good feelings around WWE related to this. But right now, WWE seems so unfan. Let me start that sentence again. Right now, WWE is so fan unfriendly. They haven't been this fan unfriendly probably for about 8 years, when it was just the disconnect between what Vince wanted and what Vince was pushing and what the live crowds, the live crowds I'm claiming aren't there anymore. There was a huge disconnect between that. And there was sort of you like what we're booking, and you're gonna take it, and we're the only game in town. I don't know if it was Triple H taking over. I don't know if it was the presence of AEW. I don't know what it was. But that did sort of change and soften. I felt like they became a much more fan-friendly promotion in the last few years, until the other things have started piling on. The ticket prices, the bad press, and the creative that has slid after such a smooth and well-functioning period during that Bloodline era. So I think something like this, it's not this big affront to wrestling. It wasn't a big affront to John Cena, and it wasn't a big affront to the fans. Some of the fans just didn't like it, and it was a bit of a last straw for them. It's just another thing that piled on. It was another death by 1,000 cuts, and they finally have had enough of Triple H, at least in this context. When I say getting pleasure out of him being booed, it's not like I just want him to be booed everywhere he goes, but it's a little nauseating for him to open all the shows, to have him be touted for all these years as this genius of NXT and this one who could do no wrong. And compared to freaking Vince McMahon, it's really easy to look good, I think, in some of these scenarios. And I'm not saying Triple H is all bad, because I've been a fan of a lot of his booking. Haven't been for a while, but in general, I think he's a better booker than Vince McMahon. And we don't need to be bringing back Vince or wondering what we could have, like, we're not going there. But Triple H has lost something. The honeymoon period ended with him a long time ago, but I think he's lost those fans, those younger fans. He's lost the goodwill with them, that he's going to do that right thing. His aura of invincibility and intelligence, it's been shattered for those fans. For those fans that thought he had it, either the ones that Triple H brought back to wrestling or the ones he brought into wrestling, now they have like negative thoughts toward him. And go back to many years ago, like I was saying, there were times in the 2010s and the 20-teens and the late 2000s where you could argue WWE and Vince booked it right, did a great job with some stuff, or there'd be some really good stuff. And the cynical wrestling fans who'd been around forever, who just didn't like anything that was going on, would just crap all over these things. Whether they were good or bad, it didn't matter. Just the fact that they were WWE and Vince products made them bad. Triple H isn't quite there yet, but he's teetering on there. He's getting very, very close. And I applaud him for what he did on Saturday night. I think that was the right decision. But overall, it feels like he kind of just needs to tighten all this stuff up, because you had such a captive audience, and I don't think they're going anywhere yet. They're not leaving, but you've lost that really hard thing to get back. You have lost their trust. I don't think you lost it because of what you did on Saturday night. What you did on Saturday night just made them mad, and it made them a reason to be mad at you. So there is a real problem. Triple H just seems to be, quite frankly, really, really dismissive of it. Yeah, for sure. Hill run being horrible doesn't take away from the finish. The match didn't suck. WWE fans are just over it. Let's catch up on the chat here. He said, newest Sandman podcast episode yesterday. Sandman said Oliver, his son, that he does the pod with when he was 5 or 6, was backstage chatting. hitting Cena with the kendo stick, and Cena was ready for that. They said Cena's cool about it. I'm sure the Sandman kid is why Cena don't like kids. Sandman's son. Well, there's a lot of psychology, right? That kid of Sandman has been through a lot. I mean, he didn't know. He went with Raven for a little while. His dad was blind. Think about the trauma this kid has had. He should have beat. You know what? Sandman's kid could have beat John Cena. I support that fully. Okay. As I said earlier, I think the problem was, or a problem, wrestling fans, as much as they might claim to want wrestling to have a lot of heat, they don't like it all the time when their hearts are broken. Like, there's a fine line between heat and broken hearts. We're not going to let the facts get in the way of a good story. So Gunther, King Gunther, the guy, there he is, right there. He broke your heart on Saturday night. He's the most evil man that's ever lived. And I decided, you know what? I want to kind of go back through WWE history, and I realized like a lot of these I was thinking of, it's not even WWE history. I just want to go through the last number of years and recap sometimes that. Let me start that over. I wanted to go and recap times in the recent history. Times in recent history that WWE fans felt their heart was broken because of booking. Now, I'm not talking as much backstage stuff. Like when your favorite loses, you might be mad because of the booking. I might be mad because of the booking. I might come on a podcast and complain about it. But this is like being legitimately mad at the outcome of a storyline. You might be mad about the backstage stuff as well and the implications of it. But even if you don't follow anything backstage, you could be mad about it, or people at least were mad about it. So let me go through a few of these real quick. Some recent instances of WWE fans having their heart broken. So let me clear the king off of there. I'm getting a little bit better at the functionality of everything. Don't quite have the budget for the other thing. All right. So if we're going to talk about this, and everyone has brought up this example, but it's the most obvious example. It's the one time in my life that wrestling kind of felt real in that way because it was a genuine reaction to a match result. You know what I'm talking about. The ending of the streak. This famous face, it's been, what year are we? It's been 11 years. This is still the face of a shocked wrestling fan. That face still resonates. You see the one, the Undertaker doing the same thing? Like that? Legitimately shocking. I remember this so vividly. Watching on a computer because I couldn't figure out how to put the streaming on TV, and it was the first time the WWE Network, rest in peace, had become what you were using to watch pay-per-view. And it was stunning, and the discourse was out of control, right? Was it a work? Was it a shoot? Was it a mistake? Why did they do it? They ruined the one thing we still have in wrestling. Yada, yada, yada. And then you had Brock go on like the monstrous of monster runs that he could have got on. Point was to get that heat transferred onto Brock Lesnar. The point was to get that heat transferred onto Roman Reigns. That took a long time for that to fully happen. But Brock got tons off of being the guy who beat the streak. That is the template for this. It's the most obvious thing to say, but it was also the same situation on the ground. Fans felt betrayed. Fans thought they knew how that was going to end, and it ended slightly differently. It went against those expectations that they had set up in their mind. But ultimately, it was probably a good thing. Just a couple of months later, there was another heartbreaking moment. This wasn't a match result, but this happened on Monday Night Raw. And I'm talking about this most infamous of moments. The Shield breaking up. Now, why did it happen? It happened because the rest of the main event scene completely fell apart. Daniel Bryan got hurt. There wasn't, and at that point he was only feuding with Kane. The Shield was kind of ready. It seemed like they were going to break up many months earlier, but then they kind of held them together. And the Shield were awesome in these main events. So you needed a top heel, and Seth Rollins had to betray the Shield, and we're still getting the storyline implications about this. People were straight up mad that the Shield weren't going to be a thing anymore. They weren't so mad at Seth Rollins turning heel or going with the Authority, although they booed him for months. They legit booed him for a long time. He got a lot of heat, and then Cesaro, as a result of Brock Lesnar beating The Undertaker, got a lot of heat in this time period. Both of them for breaking a wrestling fan's heart. The Shield was the first thing liked in pro wrestling. I mean, like legitimately liked in many, many years. It's hard to think about it now if you weren't around, but there were very few WWE creations that ever came in and the fans were actually ecstatic about, bought into, followed the storylines, booked well. The Shield started all of that. And them breaking up nearly 2 years into the run, when it really felt like at that point they were the main event of the show, that was heartbreaking. Now, when I talk about heartbreak in this era, there's one man that usually comes up. And this list could have all been times that the fans' heart was broken over this guy's booking. But I want to point to a very, very specific instance, because this is just simply a match result. I'm not going to pick the year before because he wasn't even in the match, but you know what I'm talking about. When Brian Danielson, had his dreams shattered at the Royal Rumble in 2015. 2014, they didn't put him in the damn match. Poor Rey Mysterio had to get booed for being that number 30 slap. They let Daniel be in the match in 2015, but leading into it, especially after the "I'm here to declare" promo by Roman Reigns. I've misspoke like 7 times on the stream. Who the fuck am I to talk? Anyway, because he was advertised for the match, because of Brock Lesnar was going to be the champion, that was the seeming dream match that all the smarks had created in their heads. Seemed like no way that at least he wasn't going to be in the final 2 of the Rumble. And midway, when he's eliminated by Bray Wyatt and Shattered Dreams just goes up on the screen, and that crowd did not care about the rest of that Royal Rumble. They turned on that match from there. At least the year before, they were waiting for number 30, thinking they were going to get their catharsis there. Nope. They were mad. This is where the famous photo of The Rock getting booed with Roman Reigns. I don't think The Rock and Roman Reigns are family anymore, or at least it took them to the Bloodline era for them to reconcile as family from this incident. It's really, really put a wrench in the Bloodline. And it pissed people off. It just got people mad. There was actually a similarity in that the wrestlers leaving were being harassed because they were so mad. I remember that was a story. And then there was a big snowstorm the next night, so no one had to really answer for it, and there was no arena in the crowd. There was no crowd in the arena. I'm sure Saturday at the post show, Triple H would have loved if there was a blizzard and none of the fans could be there to boo him. There was Danielson's dreams getting shattered. Daniel Bryan, I used to joke, he ruined the gimmick of the Royal Rumble. Like, for about 3 years, if Daniel Bryan didn't win the Royal Rumble, the Rumble was considered a disaster. And he never won one. All right, moving along. The last of the retro ones. Kofi Kingston getting squashed on the first SmackDown on Fox. You might argue this is a backstage meta thing, but no, even if you're just a Kofi Kingston fan, you're just a good old wrestling fan, right? And Kofi Kingston, people misremember because of how his championship reign ended. His championship reign was really good. They booked him strong against Orton. He was booked as a champion. He wasn't booked as one of these happenstance Rey Mysterio type of champions. They booked him legit as a champion. And then they squashed him in a few seconds to Brock Lesnar on TV. It was terrible. It undid everything that you had watched the last few months. And then to follow through on it, they pretended like he was never the champion. I don't know if they've ever even still acknowledged it. The most acknowledgement they had is he got a little bit of offense in on Brock in that year's Rumble. You know the Rumble that Drew won that no one remembers? Yeah, that's when all this was going down. That decision made people mad. That decision sucks. See what happens when Brock Lesnar wrestles on free TV? Not good. And that was like the freest of TV you could have. That's Fox. You just need like an antenna and a box and maybe a subscription to get that. But other than that, you could have got that match. And that's what you just saw. The big match of Brock Lesnar wrestling on television. And of course, the most recent time that WWE fans got their heart broken was Cena's smiley tap. We need, like, I'm pretty sure Ms. Girl, she's like probably a Ms. Woman at this point. I need her reaction. I wonder what she was thinking. All right. A couple more things, and then we'll get on out of here. Hold on one sec. And I'm back. I have my Lobo branded Cokes. No, I just had to fix it on the laundry machine. Grandmaster Rob. When I go back, I would that segment's not dead. In fact, you give me an idea because we're gonna. I think the content's all gonna be a little weird for everyone in the next couple of weeks because if you want to, you can kind of look at the results of most of these shows. So the first run content's gonna be a lot of looking back on the year, and I think I might need to set the record straight on some stuff. So definitely there will be a costume change. This was making sure my washer, it likes to walk nowadays. So I was just trying to make sure that all that was in order. Nice shout out though to Grandmaster Rob. All right, let me put someone up on here. You seen this guy? Ask the other bald guy. All right, this is CM Punk, and this was him last night with a really, really impassioned promo towards Braun Breaker. Really towards Braun, towards Rick Steiner, towards Scott Steiner. Had them all. Took them all to task. And this was nice to see. It was nice to see on his big return. The guy was out for like 2 weeks, and they're making it sound like he's gone for 6 months. On CM Punk's big return to Monday Night Raw, cut a hell of a fiery promo on Braun. And of course, he's got the match on January 5th against Braun. And all the discussion, though, in the last couple of weeks was about Braun Breaker's promo and whether or not he can hang with Punk and whether or not he's up to the task of hanging with the big boys. But that and another conversation I had with one of my producers got me thinking about something else as it relates to CM Punk. I've come to the conclusion that now, and only now, is the time for CM Punk to lock in. Stupid watch. In case you haven't quite realized, CM Punk is all of a sudden one of the last of his generation. I mean, Orton's still around, Mysterio's still around. There's still people around from his time. But it feels like every day we're getting a new insight into Brock retiring, maybe. Samoa Joe is retiring. AJ Styles might be retiring. All the people that CM Punk would have wrestled in his prime, a lot of them are falling off. And they brought this topic up to CM Punk on the post show on Saturday, and he was talking about how he can see that most of his wrestling career is behind him, but he's very engaged and he's very into what he's doing now, which is great. Hope he keeps that energy. But despite being the last of his generation, and now especially with the biggest block to him becoming the top guy, as far as a single individual in front of him, John Cena, actually being gone, CM Punk has a huge, huge opportunity on his hands that I really, really hope he takes advantage of. Now, this discussion for me, as I was talking to another pretty serious wrestling fan, my producer, we were actually talking not about CM Punk, but we were talking about Bryan Danielson. And we were debating the AEW run of matches for Bryan Danielson, specifically what that gave to his career. I think before Bryan Danielson went to AEW, he had a bit of GOAT status of his own. And I ain't just talking about his appearance. That you can argue he's the greatest indie wrestler of all time. You can argue he's one of the great in-ring wrestlers of all time. But all of those accolades, all of that praise, I think, is enhanced and confirmed by the late career run he had in AEW. Having to have those big, long matches on national TV probably helped endure him to a lot of people. It's a little nice explanation point that he put at seemingly the end of his career. And that had me thinking, I kind of think if this is like legit sports and we're doing our all-time rankings, there's been so much talk about who's the GOAT recently, so much so that even CM Punk had to be asked on the post show. And he talked pro wrestling. He did not talk sports entertainment. But when we think about ranking these guys, and all of them, I was thinking about, hey, maybe that AEW run really fully puts Danielson over Punk. And then my producer pointed something out, and it was exactly right. Well, you know what? Punk needs to lock in. Punk needs to use this last run that he's on to finalize his resume, to enhance it before the sun sets on his career. For the first time ever in WWE, CM Punk is a top guy. I mean, like a real top guy. He's not the top guy. That belongs to Roman Reigns, with Cody getting some scraps on the side. I'm saying he's just a top guy, like a real top guy. He held the title before. He had main evented before. He had been focused on a little bit before, but that was one of his primary grievances of how non-focused on he was. Now he is unquestionably a top guy. I hate to say it, and he would hate that I said it, he's kind of part of the WWE wrestling establishment. I mean, he's literally on all the advertising world of the made guys are. He's in that mix. And according to him, CM Punk, he's probably accomplished now everything he set out to accomplish. He's come back. He's won titles. In his mind, he's main evented a WrestleMania. So I could see him being a little fat and happy. But now, Phil Brooks, now is not the time to coast. It's time for you to focus. As I said, it's time for you to lock in. And the place to lock in is exactly where you started last night. It's with Braun Breaker. Again, all this talk, can Breaker hang with Punk? There's been almost no talk about can Punk bring Breaker up to his level? Can Punk make Braun Breaker? Thinking about it, even though CM Punk hasn't always had the reputation for winning all of his matches, he's always been kind of the up-and-coming guy in every context that he's been in, or he's at least been a top guy. We've never really thought of CM Punk, or never even wanted to think of CM Punk as the guy used to make other guys. But as he is getting closer and closer to his 50th birthday, he kind of has no other choice. And it's a skill set that he probably possesses in much, much higher capacity than most of the rest of the roster. At his age, I think it's probably out of reach for him to be the guy, because I think that's still probably maybe his ultimate goal, to be the ultimate focused upon number one, this company revolves around him. He kind of almost had that in AEW, but we know how that ended. I don't think that's realistic for him at this point. But that doesn't mean he can't add to that resume. That doesn't mean that he cannot absolutely enshrine himself in this last little bit of his career as one of the greatest WWE top guys of all time. I like to think of a guy like Mick Foley, a guy who's been in the news today. That's, I think, a bit of a model for CM Punk. Mick Foley rarely won his matches after he became a big-time main event guy. But it's almost like no one could be a main eventer until they had a feud with Mick Foley. Think The Rock, Triple H, to some extent Steve Austin. And then after he retires, the same thing is applied for Edge and for Orton. And since Foley ceded that role by just not being around so much anymore because he can't get medically cleared, I don't think they've had a guy to quite fill that capacity. The guy to fully make other guys. Triple H, and he's going to hate me for that, CM Punk is well suited to get that done. He just needs to lock in on this last part of his career. Like JR used to say, maximize your minutes. You think Punk is on here taking advice from me? He's like, I was just gonna coast. But Robbed by Wrestling suggested that it's time for me to lock in so I could become the greatest of all time. I mean it, Punk. You can do it. Nobody. And Rob means nobody believes in you more than me. There's someone in my door. Am I just kicking stuff? I'm not answering. There's no one should be there. I don't know what's going to happen with LA Knight. Him being this injury and him being gone, the timing just seems very, very, very curious, doesn't it? I've talked a lot. So I want to close out. Let me, we're not going to quite do Grandmaster Rob, but bald headphone mock Scott Van Pelt. We could do. Here. Maybe if I put him like this, I don't look like such a. I can do it with the hat. I can't do it. No. Okay. There, I'm like the cool dudes at the gym. All right. Bye bye, Phil. Lock in. All right. You know what I'm going to put on my screen? That's right. We're going to talk. Shelly and say, no, we're not. Look at him. Look at the diesel. Look at Big Kev. Big Sexy. Highlight of his career. Paparazzi Productions, right? Kevin Nash made a little bit of news. Just a slight bit. Just a slight bit of news. Every time Kevin speaks, honestly, it could be newsworthy because he's outspoken, he's well spoken, and the things he says gets attention. Now, I don't think he planned on getting a lot of attention with this, and it hasn't picked up too much steam, but I found what he said here just hilarious, and I just really, really want us all to share in what Kevin Nash said about Randy Orton on his podcast with Sean Oliver. So let me pull that up real quick for you. Oops. I guess I messed that up. Oh, no. There we go. Well, there's the tease of what I'm going to talk about. That's not what I meant to be sharing right now. That's a spoiler on what he says here. Oh, you are annoying computers. There we go. Now they're on my screen. Let me make them a little bit smaller. All right. Let's hear. Now let me frame what Sean Oliver let me frame what Sean Oliver and Kevin Nash are talking about here. It actually dovetailed off a long discussion on how no one could ever replace Kareem, but this was all to talk about who could replace Cena, and they were talking about Cena as the GOAT, and Sean Oliver was bringing up different people that could be in that mix. And he took a unsolicited but I thought friendly shot at Randy Orton that I wanna break down. Now, if you can't hear this, throw it in the chat right away, or else I'm just gonna play the clip. But about later on, I'll insert this clip. Well, I'm sorry if you couldn't hear that. So I might have to throw in that clip later. But basically, what he said is Randy can't be the guy because Randy is not a mark for himself. Randy wants to work out, collect his pay, go home, do his thing. And then he goes on to say, actually, that, like, of course, Randy would be kind of over it all. He grew up in the business, he grew up around it. And so he's not a mark. He's not plussed by all of this. He's there to get paid, to do his thing, and to get out. I've heard this broken down a few different ways, but holy hell, did Kevin Nash just confirm everything we always thought about Randy Orton? Like, isn't the rap from a smarky isn't the rap on Randy that he was lazy and he didn't care? Now that's coming from us on the outside. We don't know anything. And it's really easy for us to judge pro wrestlers, like the hardest job in the world. And we're sitting here, hey, that's a botch. Oh, you suck. None of these guys get away. I can't believe how fat the wrestlers are now. That's what we all do, right? Randy Orton must be lazy because he has boring matches. Well, and we've heard Seth Rollins say, like, Randy just likes to play it safe. But this is Kevin Nash, and his verbiage is the funniest thing when he says he's not a mark for himself. Now, I couldn't find this exactly, but I can recall a lot of Kevin Nash and his ilk just complaining constantly about wrestlers being marks for themselves. In fact, I think refer back to anything that Scott Hall, rest in peace, or Kevin Nash said about Bret Hart. That was his exact problem, that he was too much of a mark for himself. And the way Kevin's explained it here, it's almost like it's a negative thing. But I kind of want to throw that out to you guys. Should we admire Randy Orton if he really just wants to do his job and go home for probably, extending his career, his life, and all areas of balance? Or is Kev kind of saying what we always kind of think, that if you're not truly invested and all in as a psychotic wrestling mark, or I should say wrestling mark, but if you're not all in on wrestling, you probably shouldn't be the guy? Sounds like Kevin is saying that. I don't have the authority to say that, but he kind of does. I'm really interested. I would really love to see what Randy's response to this would be. I kind of think Randy might agree and consider it a compliment. I would have liked some follow-up on this to know what exactly Kevin thinks. What does the Diesel think exactly? And I think, let me scratch all that. I know he's, for some of the ridiculous things he says, I think there's always conviction in what Nash says. And I think, unlike a lot of people, Nash can be very unemotional when he talks about wrestling. So he's just doing maybe the best wrestling analysis he could possibly do by saying, and obviously he knows people too, of just saying, well, he's not a mark for himself, so he can never be fully in that kind of way. But I would say these people also frame being a mark for yourself as a negative thing. So then does that mean being the top guy is a negative thing according to those in pro wrestling? It's one of those interesting things of why wrestling podcasts it's why wrestling podcasts are interesting. They give us a little bit of insight to these brains that we could never, ever possibly understand. Yeah, I should have had Dom do this. I just thought that was just the funniest. Like, and I listened to the whole thing. Now, I've liked Sean Oliver over the years. The stuff on YouTube that he used to do was one of my favorite. Really, before podcasts took on, he was the guy to get all the wrestlers on. And it took me a second to get into this episode of Click This, because it's really just like Kevin Nash riffing and not doing a podcast riffing. Like, Steve Austin knows how to do a podcast. A lot of these guys knows how to do a podcast. Kevin Nash might know how to do a podcast. But really, he's just kind of being interviewed by Sean Oliver this whole time, and like went on this whole tangent that I was completely following about Kareem being the GOAT. But they somehow did tie this back to the wrestling conversation. So I don't know if I'm going to be the biggest click this fan every week, but Kevin Nash is never short on opinions. So maybe it might be a good idea for me to just weekly monitor the show, because I have a feeling we have tons of news gold every week that it's just flying off into ether. I know a lot of people listen, but I think we can mine quite a bit out of it. Yeah, you know, if I had more time, if I actually cared about doing some big takedown of Kevin Nash, which I don't. I think Kevin Nash is like good for the pro wrestling business in a lot of ways. His perspectives are good. I would love, I could do like a news gotcha and put his two clips side to side. Like, that's not what you said before, but I kind of just found this before work and wanted to throw it in as something fun on the show. All right, guys, that's just about going to do it for this week. See, last week I went 2 hours on one topic, and I went an hour and 14 minutes on like several topics this week. I'm liking this Tuesday time slot. I'm thinking I'm gonna do it a little more often. I mean, I've done 2 out of 2, which those of you guys who follow my consistency over at Brass Ring Media, you might think we're in a renaissance era of Rob being here multi weeks in a row. But I like some of the new functions actually on YouTube live streaming. So this seems like a fun way to build videos out of. And I'm getting all my tech stuff sort of back online from that stuff. So if you haven't subscribed, which I know you have, please do so. Please share the videos, get the word. That's why I need some subscribers. People are watching the video so far. I need some subs, and I need some chat game going. I know E's chatting with me over here, but I need everybody to start chatting. You got that? All right, guys. I'm gonna head on out of here. Next week is Christmas week. So wait. Before I get off, what date? Because I have children and stuff. I can't just be talking wrestling. But that gives me some ideas for some wrestling. I could prep a wrestling themed, Christmas themed stream. Let me see. Tell you guys what. There will be a stream next week. It probably won't be at the same time. There's some stuff with my work schedule I got to figure out, but there will be some content next week. Nice looking out, E. Nice looking out and all that. All right, guys.